Good afternoon, everybody, and on behalf of Governor Cuomo, thank you for being here today and attending this very important ceremony. I have a number of acknowledgments that I'm going to read off, so please bear with me. Starting off in the audience, and we speaking, Assembly Majority Leader Joe Morelli. Thank you. Good. Assembly Member Harry Bronson. Assembly Member Pete Lawrence. Our new Monroe County Executive, Cheryl Denolfo. The Mayor of our City of Rochester, Mayor Lovely Warren, who's speaking. The Vice President and Director of Brookings Metropolitan Policy Program, Amy Liu, is here. Our two co-hosts joining us today from the President and CEO of the Greater Rochester Enterprise, Mark Peterson, and the President of the Downtown Development Corporation, Heidi Zimmermeyer. I want to thank them both. President of the UVAR, Joel Seligman, and also the co-chair of our great regional council. I want to recognize Joel and also Danny Wegman, who I think was on the way. I want to thank them both for their great work with the regional council in the last 5 years. Two very special people who are hosting today, Ken Glazer from Buckingham Properties and also Bob Morgan, the CEO of Morgan Management. A special thanks to them. I'll mention them momentarily in other comments, but they are hosting this event today. What a beautiful building. And for both the Morgan Properties and Buckingham Properties, if I have it correctly, $250 million of their own money in downtown Rochester. That shows tremendous confidence in the mayor and the city. We have some members of the governor's team are here. I want to mention, first of all, the Secretary of State, Cesar Perales. I want to welcome the Secretary of State. President and CEO of Empire State Development, Howard Zemsky, is in the house. The President of the Environmental Facilities Corporation, Sabrina T, is in the house. I want to welcome her. And we have a number of elected officials. We can't go through everybody. I want to welcome you all for coming and thank you. And otherwise, we'd be here till 5 o'clock. So I just want to thank you so much for coming. Today's event at Midtown, it's appropriate that we are here. I mentioned Bob Morgan and Ken Glazer. I also want to mention Larry Glazer and Jane Glazer, two business leaders, two stalwarts. And this building, this site, really was such a part of Larry Glazer's vision for downtown. And he's in heaven, along with Jane, looking down today and seeing what is happening here. Because this building, this site, is a metaphor for change in this city, and really a metaphor for change across upstate. Was once before, came down thanks to the state support, and what is going up right now is, to me, in Midtown, this whole complex is a tremendous example of public-private partnership. Support from the state, and the governor put additional $5 million in this building. The great support from Buckingham Properties and Bob Morgan's team. To me, it's a great metaphor for where this community is going. I want to acknowledge also the mayor will be speaking for her great support with this building. And it really encompasses why the governor's here. I can say this, having worked with the governor for 4 years, having an extraordinary experience working with him and being on his team. No governor in my memory ever has invested more and spent more money and really tried to bring about change in upstate New York than Governor Cuomo has, bar none. Nobody is even close. I look at what he has done across the state, what he has done here. In the last year, in 13 months, our regional council won a top prize in December of 2014. We just won the Upstate Revitalization competition, a huge competition, $500 million. This is the hub for the AIM Photonics designation, which I might add. With all the talent that we have here for photonics, we would not have that here if it had not been for Governor Cuomo's $250 million pledge for that project. And that, to me, is a real investment in this community. And what he has done here is also mirrored in Buffalo, having spent quite a bit of time in Buffalo in my last career with the governor. What's happening with the Buffalo Billion up there is no mirage. It started with the announcement of the Buffalo Billion, started with a shot of confidence that the governor put in that community, and followed by real money, real investment, and real jobs. And what you're seeing across the whole upstate corridor is this kind of investment and what is happening, what's happening here. And you can feel the vibe in this community. You can feel it here in this building. You can feel it around this community, the things that are coming, the investments that are coming. And I would say that the governor's done his job with investment. The rest of it falls on us. We have our job to do, to take those investments and run with it and really have the results that really are envisioned for this community and this region. And it gives me great confidence. I've worked with this man for 4 years. I have often said, and I'll say it again, he's the best governor in the country. He is not only a great governor, he is a great friend. On both a personal and professional basis, it has been an extraordinary pleasure to have worked with him, to know him. I want to publicly thank him for what he has done, not only for me personally and professionally, but what he's done for this community. And time again, he has done it, and today is one more example. So please welcome to the podium the great governor of the state of New York and a great friend of Rochester, New York, Governor Andrew Cuomo.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you very, very much. Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, it is my pleasure to be back in Rochester. It's always a pleasure. It's a pleasure to see the growth and to celebrate the growth with you. First, to Bob Duffy, who was a great, great lieutenant governor and a great friend, and I miss him very much. I hope you're enjoying having him back home, but I'm missing having him in Albany. I'll tell you one of the things I feel good about. Bob did not want to become the lieutenant governor when I first spoke with him. He was the mayor of Rochester. He was having a good time, and he believed in Rochester. I was the attorney general. And I talked to him about it, and he said, no, I don't want to do it. I want to stay here at home. This is my passion. And I said, well, if it's really your passion, and you really want to help Rochester, then you have to go to Albany, because Rochester can't help Rochester. It takes the state government to help Rochester. And in truth, one of the big problems has been the state government has ignored Rochester and most of upstate New York. And if you want to turn that around, come with me to Albany. Let's change the orientation of Albany. And I am telling you, we will make a difference in Rochester. And I was thinking about it in the plane on the way up today, Bob. We made a difference in Rochester. We did what we said we would do, and it wouldn't have happened without you. Bob Duffy. You're going to hear from my colleague from Albany, Joe Morelli, the Grand Poobah, the Lionheart of the Assembly, the man who can get anything done. If we do not get this legislative agenda passed for Rochester, you look at Joe Morelli, because he is the man who could get it done, and we know he's going to get it done. So let's give him a big thank you in advance of getting it passed, Joe Morelli. We have Mayor Lovely Warren, who's doing a great job in the city. She's been a great partner to me. Pleasure to be with you, Mayor. Thank you very much. And we have Amy Lou from Brookings. Brookings is doing magnificent work in this field all across the country and all across the world, frankly. And she is a national and an international professional in this, and she's been a great aid to us. Amy Lou, thank you very much for being here. To my colleagues from the administration, to the Regional Economic Development members, congratulations to all of you. Today I'd like to talk to you about what I'm going to propose in the State of the State that's coming up in a few days. The State of the State is a version of the State of the Union. The President does the State of the Union and says this is the agenda for the Union. The State of the State is the local version of that. But it's an important document because it lays out the legislative agenda, the action plan, the game plan for different regions all across the state and different areas. The way we do it, we also combine the state budget with the State of the State, so you have not just the theory, but the numbers. Because in government, like in business, like in life, the numbers are often more relevant than the words, you know. So we have combined both the theory, the plan, and the actual budget document. We have made upstate a priority for a long time, and this is going to follow that tradition. I'm excited about it because I think it brings our program to the next level. When we started 5 years ago, this state was in terrible shape, had a $10 billion deficit, one of the worst deficits in the history of the state of New York. It was total gridlock. You see what you see in Washington now? That gridlock, we had that gridlock New York style, which was a little nastier, a little meaner than what they have in Washington. So the state was really in rough shape. Upstate New York was in terrible shape economically. There was a great negativism. Businesses were leaving, people were leaving. So we brought it back. We made a lot of progress. And I really believe we have a foundation now to launch ourselves to an even higher level. And that's what we're going to do this year. It's a very ambitious agenda, but I think it's a doable agenda. And it's one I wanted to share with you first. When we first started, we started by focusing on the economy. Why? Because the economy is what produces jobs and a tax base, and that's the engine that pulls the train. It's that simple. If you look at our state seal, our founding fathers knew this. The center of the state seal is what? Our two sailboats on the Hudson River. And they're not just sailboats going out for a Saturday cruise. That's not what they were there for. One is a smaller sailboat, the schooner, which was to symbolize intrastate commerce. The other was a larger sailing vessel to symbolize international commerce. On the Hudson River, that's actually at Mount Beacon. But it shows the founding fathers were really talking about at the center of the enterprise is business. Why? People were coming here for opportunity. The early immigrants were coming here for jobs. They couldn't get them in the old land for one reason or another, or they were discriminated against, and they were here to work. And to work, business has to grow, business has to thrive. It was the center of the state. Government's role was then to stimulate that economic growth and to build the platform, the transportation, the education, and the communication systems so those businesses could thrive. Somewhere along the way, New York lost its way. And we got arrogant. I call it the New York arrogance. And we took business for granted. We were New York. We were the home of all the big business, Upstate, Kodak, IBM. They were here. They were ours. And where were they going to go? They couldn't move anyway. We're in New York. There's no place else to go. Actually, there are other places to go. If you look at a map, to the west of New York, you will see these other shapes, rectangular shapes, oblong shapes. Those are called other states. They are not New York, but they are actually habitable. And we had people and businesses leaving because we took them for granted. Upstate New York, we didn't shift with the economy. The economy shifted from the manufacturing economy. We then had to facilitate that shift. We didn't. We sat and we suffered, and we just took the loss of jobs and the loss of economy. Most of all, we raised taxes, and we raised taxes, and we raised taxes. Why? Because we like to spend a lot of money. That's why we raise taxes. It is that simple an equation. I have it in Albany, and I have it at home. My daughters like to spend money. They do. They enjoy it. It gives them joy. They like to spend money. If you spend money, you must generate money on the other side. That is the equation that fits. We forgot the importance of growing businesses and what raising those taxes were going to mean. And 50 years, the state spending was out of control. And this says it all. This goes back to Rockefeller times, 50 years. Over 50 years, Nelson Rockefeller raised the state spending on average 11% a year. Hugh Carey, governor for 8 years, 7.9%. Mario Cuomo, 12 years, 6.9%. George Pataki, 5.2%. Spending was going up. Republican or Democrat, by the way. Oh, those Democrats, they really spend money. Oh, really? Nelson Rockefeller, Republican, Wilson, 11%. Interestingly, the difference between Mario Cuomo, big spending liberal, right? George Pataki, fiscally conservative Republican. The whole difference is 1.7%. between the two. Now, that rate of spending was actually going up higher than the rate of inflation for 50 years. It was also going up at a higher rate than people were earning money. Imagine that. 50 years, government was spending at a higher rate than people were earning. And that's why you wonder when people say, well, I feel like government is putting their hand deeper and deeper in my pocket. It felt like that because they were. The spending was more than people were making. And that's what was chasing people away. We said, Bob and I, we're going to change all that. We're going to change 50 years of behavior. And we're going to get spending under control. And everybody said, you're full of baloney. I said, oh, really? Go tell Bob. He's full of baloney. Look how big he is. We said we were going to do it, and they said, you can't do it. The legislature's not going to let you do it. The legislature loves to spend money, and the legislature runs Albany. We said we're going to do it. You know what we did? 5 years, 1.4%, the lowest level of spending in modern political history since they've been keeping numbers in the state of New York. Now, when you spend less, good things happen. It's like when you reduce your caloric intake, good things happen, right? When you spend less, then you can tax less. And we did. Everyone in the state of New York now pays a lower tax rate than they did 5 years ago. Middle class tax rate, lowest level since 1953. Lowest corporate tax since 1968, lowest manufacturing tax since 1917. So this is a dramatic shift and a dramatic change to business and a much different change than what they had seen for the past 50 years. And our message was, it's a different day. I know you think New York is anti-business. I know you think we're going to raise taxes and you have to move. No, your future is here because we got it and we changed our ways. What's the biggest tax in the state of New York? It's the property tax. Has nothing to do with the state of New York. FDR used to rail about this when people used to talk about the taxes in New York. We collect about $50 billion in property taxes, about $40 billion in income tax. The property tax is the killer. It is the killer. We have 10,500 local governments. And that's why the property tax is so high. Just think about that. 10,500. Every morning, 10,500 light switches, 10,500 fleets of cars, all those employees, all those pension benefits. That's why we've been pushing so hard, shared services, consolidation, et cetera. But property taxes in upstate New York, the highest in the United States of America. Not just high relatively, highest in the state, United States of America. And that is the number one tax problem in upstate New York. When you compare the property tax to the income tax, it's more than double what you're paying in property taxes, what you're paying in income taxes. What we did finally is we signed a 2-year 2% property tax cap, which says the local governments can't raise it more than 2% or they need a supermajority. That is saving thousands of dollars, about $2,800. So after removing the barriers to the economic growth, we then worked aggressively with business in regional partnerships around the state. And we started with the part of the state that needed the most help, which was upstate New York. Upstate had suffered decades of decline because of the high taxes that came from the spending, because of Albany's gridlock. They hadn't passed budgets on time in decades in Albany. It was like a game. It was that constant charade. At once a year, they would have the budget madness that you'd have to watch on TV. The manufacturing economy changed, and we didn't transition. Businesses became more mobile, and upstate New York does not have the same strength in Albany that downstate has. Now, it sounds like a harsh statement. It's a true statement. Downstate has more population. It has more assemblymen, more senators, a higher percentage of the political strength, and it made it easy to ignore upstate New York. Frankly, the biggest thing that Bob Duffy and I did was we put our thumb on the scale, and we said, I don't care if upstate doesn't have the votes. I don't care if upstate doesn't have the political representation. Upstate needs the help, and that's why they've gotten more help than ever before. We focused like a laser beam. To date, we invested $25 billion in upstate New York, the largest state investment in history in upstate New York is $25 billion. And we did it a different way. We did it through regional partnerships. We went to the regional business community. Joel Seligman, Danny Wegman here are the co-chairs. We said to them, you tell us how to grow the economy. We didn't go to the politicians. We didn't go to the Albany bureaucrats. We went to the businesses. You tell us how to do it. And it is working. It's working everywhere. And it's working in the part of the state that had the greatest problems, which was Buffalo. That is a 1 million square foot solar panel manufacturing plant in Buffalo, New York, on the same site of one of the last largest steel mills in Buffalo. Literally rising from the ashes of yesterday's economy is the largest building for tomorrow's economy. This company is the largest solar panel manufacturer in the nation, in Buffalo, New York, believe it or not. And the energy in Buffalo is totally different. We duplicated that approach. We just went through an economic development competition, Central New York, Finger Lakes, and the Southern Tier, won $500 million each. Well, $500 million isn't a billion. By the way, the Buffalo billion was over 10 years. So it's the same rate of funding as this grant. And all that progress in Buffalo, you know how much they spent? $500 million. So $500 million goes a long, long way. This approach is working all across the state. The unemployment is down all across the state from about 8 to about 4%. More importantly, the unemployment rate is dropping uniformly across the state. In the old days, the unemployment would drop in downstate, but upstate would be stagnant. If you look at those numbers now, the growth is dropping equally, uniformly all across the state, and we're very proud of that. Upstate New York today has more private sector jobs than at any time since they've been keeping numbers. 2,473,000 jobs. And that, to me, says it all. If we're bringing back jobs, if the economy is here, everything else will follow. The goal for us now in this year is to keep it going, to keep that momentum moving. And we have a $2 billion economic development plan that will do just that I'm going to propose. And you heard Joe Morelli guaranteed that it was going to pass. And I'm very proud of that. It starts, I don't want to put any pressure on Joe. It starts with another tax cut. And it's a tax cut designed for small businesses. 97% of the businesses in New York are small. 2.8 million New Yorkers work for small businesses. We have been cutting taxes almost every year. We want to continue the tax cuts, and we're proposing a $300 million tax cut for small business in 3 pieces. 1, reduce the corporate tax for small businesses all across the board from 6.5 to 4%. Second, for those small businesses that don't file as a corporation but file as individuals, proprietors or farmers, exempt 15% of their income for taxable purposes. Just give them a 15% deduction right off the top. Third, for partnerships and S corporations, which are also many small businesses, again, a 15% income exemption from any taxation whatsoever. This will be about a $1.5 billion tax cut to over 1 million small businesses. And it's exactly the signal that we want to send. Next, for the areas of the state that did not win the urban revitalization initiative that you did, the $500 million, we want to grant them $50 million each to do their top projects. Why? There is a positive synergy among all the regions in upstate New York. If Buffalo is doing well, that helps Rochester. If Syracuse is doing well, if Utica is doing well, there is a positive cycle. And those regions, even though they didn't win, we want them to know that we're with them and we want to fund their top projects. And that would be $50 million each, Mohawk Valley, Mid-Hudson, Capital Region, North Country, for a total of $200 million. Our regional economic development councils are working. They're getting better every year. They're getting more competitive every year, coming up with more creative partnerships. I want to do a 6th round of them at $750 million. You can see how when people win, how happy they are. Look at Joel there with that big smile. Harry's smiling. Joe Morelli's talking, but it's Joe Morelli. You have Joe Roback attempting a smile. So we want to come up with a 6th round for the REDC, $750 million. Urban centers all across upstate New York are growing. It's fascinating where you had those concentric circles of development. Everybody wanted to go out to the suburb, get a house, get a backyard, and a barbecue. Now people are turning around, going back into the city, especially the young people, especially the millennials. They want to be in the city. They want the density. They want the energy. They want the attractions. We want to have, for great cities like Mayor Lovely Warren's city, a downtown revitalization plan, again through a competition, but $100 million to come up with the most creative downtown revitalization plans to bring young people back to those downtown areas. 10 communities will win $10 million each, and priorities for the funding from the normal state funding. But it'll change our focus to not just economic development, but now downtown redevelopment, which is smart on a number of levels, as you know. We'll also bring urban planning experts to help communities come up with these plans, and the exercise in and of itself is good. The question of how do we build downtown Rochester? What can we do? How do we put the pieces together? That is a healthy, positive conversation to be having. We know that the reliable infrastructure is critical for sustained economic growth. You have a lot of upstate cities, counties that are struggling with infrastructure projects. We propose $100 million for a total of $300 million for local governments to have water, sewer, local infrastructure reconstructed. The $300 million in state money will leverage $1.5 billion in infrastructure. That's going to make a significant difference all across upstate New York. And this year in the State of the State, we'll propose more upstate initiatives in transportation, energy, and agriculture. I don't want to give away all the news today, but when you add that all up, that comes to a $7 billion investment in upstate New York alone, and that, again, is going to be the largest investment ever. Let me say this in closing. The energy is with us. We are changing Upstate's story. It's going from a story of decline to opportunity and optimism. And I think this has been the most important accomplishment in many ways. When we started 5 years ago, Bob and I would talk to each other on the way back from a trip about how down people were and how cynical they were about government's ability to make a difference, and how pessimistic they were about the future. And at one point, it's self-fulfilling. If a community believes it's not coming back, then that community is not coming back. It feeds on itself. They talk about consumer confidence. They don't even understand exactly what the elements of consumer confidence is, but it's determinative. When people believe the economy is coming back, they spend, they're aggressive, they invest, and the economy comes back. When people believe the economy is going down, they conserve, they get tight, they don't spend, and that slows the economy. The same is true on another level for localities. People believe the city, the county is going down, they change their behavior. They tell their child, you know what, maybe you want to think about moving somewhere else. Maybe the jobs are going to be somewhere else. They don't invest in their house. They don't buy a new house. When they believe the future's where they live, they act differently. They see the value of real estate going up. They want to invest in their house. They want to buy a bigger house. They want to open another business. They want to expand their business. Changing that energy is everything. And if there's one dramatic shift in 5 years, it's been that change in energy. People 5 years ago believed it was over. Upstate New York was a manufacturing economy, and everything they talked about was yesterday. Oh, back in the day, back in the day, back in the day when we did steel, when we did this, when we had Kodak, that was the time. It was all retrospective. Nobody talked about the future. Nobody talked about hope. Nobody talked about tomorrow. Nobody talked about what their children were going to do and how they were going to grow. There was no outlook forward. That is what has changed. It's changed because we gave people confidence, and they now see evidence of growth. It's not that they just changed their mood. It's an educated, informed change in behavior. But that is what we need to continue to grow. Here in Rochester, it is a different feel. It's a different look. Rochester now the photonics center of the country. Vice President of the United States comes to Rochester to announce one of the largest photonics grants ever. Eastman Business Park, not what was, what will be. It's growing, it's coming back. This tower, the Sibley building, the supercomputer at RIT, everywhere you look, signs of growth and rehabilitation and advancement. And that's what we have to continue to move. Now, to make that happen, we need you. We need you. You know when government works? When you make your voice heard. It sounds simple, it sounds rhetorical, it is true. The squeaky wheel gets the grease, my friend. The communities that call for help and need help and push those legislative representatives, those are the ones who get the help. When people say, why didn't we get the help for so many years in upstate New York? Because it was downstate focused. And because downstate makes a lot of noise. Trust me. And it was too easy to ignore upstate New York. And if it's easy to ignore upstate New York, they do. I'm asking for $7 billion for upstate New York. That is a lot of money. They're not going to want to do that unless they have to do that. You can make them, you can communicate to them that it is a political essential. Joe Morelli, Deputy Majority Leader, Braveheart. He's Braveheart. He's Mel Gibson in Braveheart. But even Mel Gibson in Braveheart needed troops. You know, he gets on the horse, he paints his face, he runs up and he runs down. Mel Gibson, I like you as Mel Gibson. You could do Mel Gibson. We need to be unified, energized, and engaged. And we need to let Albany know we're coming back strong, we're coming back finally, because the state is doing what the state should be doing. We ain't going backwards, we're going forwards. We want this investment, we want to continue the momentum. We get this budget passed, this plan passed, we're not just going to rebuild Rochester. We're going to leave our children a Rochester that never was. I believe that. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you, Governor, so much for your kind words. I asked to have Grand Poobah put on my letterhead, but frankly, I don't know how to spell Poobah, so it didn't work out. But I'm delighted to be here, and I want to thank the governor for all of his kindnesses and for his leadership. And I do want to acknowledge again my great friends in the Assembly who are going to make this happen with me, Harry Bronson and Peter Lawrence. Could you give them another round of applause? And as well, all other friends and folks who are working in government, our government partners who are here today. It's so important. I want to just say a few quick things. First of all, this is another major step in the revitalization of upstate New York. The one thing that Andrew Cuomo has done is instill optimism and a sense of hope about upstate New York. And he does this all the time. It's not just announcements when he's in town, which is often. It's every single day since he's become governor, frankly, before he became governor. The conversations on the phone are always about what can we do to bring upstate New York back. And it goes back generations when upstate New York was called on to help New York City in the mid-'70s when they had their challenges, and people called upon us to step up. And as the governor has said eloquently for many years, when a part of the state is in jeopardy, when a part is in trouble, it's incumbent upon all of us to step forward and help the regions that need their help. And he has not only talked about it, he has done it more than as I would agree and echo what I have a hard time not calling you Lieutenant Governor anymore. The president of the Business Chamber of Commerce has said is that more than any other person I've worked with over the many years in government, Andrew Cuomo has stepped forward. Whether it's the Regional Economic Development Councils, whether it is Startup New York, which has in part across the street right here, which brings together one of our great assets, our academic and research facilities in upstate New York, with our entrepreneurial spirit to create Startup New York and the projects that are flowing from that. The Upstate Revitalization Initiative, and again, to Joel and Danny for their incredible leadership in helping get us over the goal line. And I do want to make note, I wasn't just talking in the picture, Governor. He has a short memory. What he said is, who's going to hold the plaque? And I said, who cares about the plaque? I'm going to hold the check, which he didn't have on him. I don't know how that worked out, but so I had to take the plaque with Joel instead. But even the governor's commitment to making sure that those who are disadvantaged and who haven't participated in the economy in the past is working with our Rochester, Monroe County Anti-Poverty Initiative, his commitment to making sure that everyone participates in the economy that we're growing. 5 on-time budgets, the lowest tax burden in this state in over 2 generations, over 50 years, and the rate of growth of spending, which the governor has talked about. It's extraordinary. And this is all about leadership. It's about gubernatorial leadership. It's about someone who is not only going to talk about it, not only someone who's going to think about it, but someone who's going to get it done and day in and day out. And this focus on small business, as someone who came out of small business, and I know many people around this room, small business is the backbone of this economy, particularly in a region that is struggling to move from an industrial base to a knowledge-based economy. It's all with our entrepreneurs. It's businesses of 1 and 2 and 5 and 10 employees that struggle each day. And this kind of break, $300 million, 1.5 over the next 5 years, this is a game changer, Governor. It's the kind of thing that I am proud to support. The governor said we would guarantee that it gets done. I don't make guarantees, unlike Joe Namath, although he was pretty successful with it. But he's another Joe in another place. But I will tell you this, that I will guarantee that I'm going to put my heart and soul into making this happen and working with my colleagues in government to make sure that not only can we do this, but we can do this in the next several days and do this on time and once again make a case of how much New York has changed and particularly how much it's changed in New York State. Opportunity and optimism. The governor mentioned it over and over again. And that opportunity and that optimism is borne out because of one person, and that is Andrew Cuomo. So, Governor, thank you again for everything you're doing for upstate New York. It now gives me great pleasure to, I mentioned the Poverty Initiative, and I want to say, working with the mayor and the new county executive, who, congratulations to Cheryl on taking the oath of office. This initiative is so important to our community as we rebuild our economy to make sure that everyone gets to participate in it. It's been an incredible opportunity for me to work with the mayor. I'm very grateful for that opportunity. Let me bring her to the podium now. The mayor of the city of Rochester, lovely Warren.
Thank you to the Majority Leader for his wonderful introduction, but I want the governor to look out to the left to Rochester, downtown Rochester. It is because of you that we have been able to change our city for the better. It is because of you that when we wanted to fill in the inner loop, the state stepped up to give us $3 million to fill in the inner loop. You look over at the West River Wall. We've been for a long time looking to repair that river wall for the residents in Cornhill, and you stepped up and you've given us the money to do that. It's because of you that housing and other things that are happening in our downtown is happening. And I would truly want to tell you that the citizens of Rochester support you, and we're so very, very thankful to you for your investment in Upstate New York. Working with Danny and Joel on a URI has been one of the best experiences I've had, because it's really about bringing our community back, making our city a city that our children can be proud of for generations to come. You said here, built to lead. In Rochester, that's what we're going to do. It is because of your support that we're going to be able to do that. And so thank you so much, Governor, for all that you do for the citizens of Rochester. And let's give him another round of applause. And with that being said, I would like to introduce Amy Liu from the Brookings Institute to come and say a few words.
Well, first of all, I want to congratulate you, Mayor, and former Lieutenant Governor Duffy, and many of your partners for your winning plan under the Upstate Revitalization Initiative. It's a real testament to the existing and emerging assets that you have in this community. I'm also really honored to be here with a former colleague and friend, Governor Cuomo, Majority Leader Morelli, and other state and regional leaders to discuss and really affirm this state's leadership in economic development. New York State and its regions, like here in Rochester, are together a shining example of what meaningful economic development is. And you heard that from the governor today. One that leads to deep and lasting prosperity. It is because of economic development that is here that is bold, aligned, and rooted in what matters to drive growth, prosperity, and inclusion. Now, I'm not biased in this because we've had the fortunate opportunities to advise the governor on the Regional Economic Development Councils, on the Buffalo Billion, or even this latest Upstate program. We, in fact, advise a number of governors and states like Nevada, Minnesota, Tennessee, Colorado, Rhode Island, about their state economic approaches. This state and its regions are far ahead of the others because of those three ingredients I just described. Economic strategies here are bold. Now, if there was a Chinese word for chutzpah, I'd use it. With the history of industrial decline, lagging incomes here in upstate New York, coupled with now a U.S. economy that is slow growing and generating not enough opportunities for people, you cannot respond with tentativeness or marginal small bore initiatives. From day one, Governor Cuomo and the state legislature have been bold in vision and investments, and they in turn have been matched with bold regional plans. Aligned. Often we work with regional leaders who complain about the state. You know, the economic strategies are siloed, the funding is fragmented, and they don't match what we care about as priorities as civic and political leaders in our community. We hear the state gets the power, the economic power of the regions, and the regions have been empowered to plan, to collaborate, and to lay out a roadmap for economic transformation. And then what's happened is the state has matched that with meaningful integrated resources. In short, there is strong alignment between states and regional ambitions here, and that's an envy in other communities. And finally, economic development here is rooted in what matters to long-term prosperity. What do I mean by that? First is that the approach here builds on the community's existing assets and the existing market drivers that deliver jobs, economic growth in ways that raises the earnings and living standards of the people. It doesn't focus first and only on attracting those assets from other communities. You start with what you have. And that is what this process has done. It's looked at what has allowed for innovation and entrepreneurship, global trade and the importance of your traded sectors, skills in education, and modern infrastructure from transit, logistics to broadband capability that connects households and businesses to the modern economy. But the other part of what makes economic development meaningful is that markets are matched with civics. Because it's only with good civics that you can get your regional strategies and your assets to be well planned, based on market logic and data, not just politics, that the strategies are sustained, well executed, and sustained with additional funding and capacity. And more importantly, that the assets that you have and the strategies you produce are extended to key neighborhoods and to all workers to reduce racial and spatial inequalities in our communities. It is the combination of markets and civics, or economics and development, that's what makes economic development meaningful. So let me just close with this. The governor started his remarks today talking about taxes and spending, getting the fiscal house in order. What I heard today is this state, with all of you, you've gotten your economic house in order. And with the combination of bold, aligned, with the markets and civics together, this region and this state is going to be really well positioned to continue to build an upstate community that is the center of global innovation and lasting prosperity for generations to come. And that's what I also heard being continued in 2016. So congratulations to all of you, and we look forward to continuing to reinforce and support the great work being done here.
I'm going to close the program first. I want to thank you all for coming. I want to thank Bob Morgan and Ken Glazer for hosting this beautiful building, what they're doing, and again, a great metaphor for change here. I want to thank our speakers. Thank the mayor and county executive. I want to thank Amy Lou, obviously, for her comments as well. I recognize again Joel Seligman from the U of R and thank him for his work. And you heard it here for the first time. We have a new Assembly Majority Leader. It's now Mel Gibson. So Mel will be leading the majority of the Assembly in the coming session. We'll get this over the top. And I want to thank you all for coming, but most importantly, the governor for being here, for the investments that he has made. And one thing, he announced tax cuts today for all the businesses that we have here that will benefit from that. We thank you. And comes to mind one in particular, his last manufacturing tax cut kept a business, a large business in Perrington, run by a Hall of Famer here in Rochester, because he was ready to move until that came, saved them 8 cents on a dollar. And so now the new cuts today, it's going to help our businesses grow. And his announcements today for the investments that are forthcoming, ones he has made, he has been terrific to Rochester. And I think in closing, he said it best. It's up to us to carry this ball over the line. I just would ask, with the old baseball commercial, to catch the fever. We talk positive, we think positive. If we think we're going to win, we are going to win. If we think we're going to transform this region, we are transforming this region. I and we talk about it. We do it every single day. So on behalf of myself and also Heidi Zimmermeyer and Mark Peterson, the host here, we thank you all for coming. And Governor, thank you so much. God bless you, and good luck in the upcoming session. Thank you.